All right, well, it's 3 o'clock. We probably aren't expecting anybody else, right? So we will call the April 7th meeting of the Pre-Planning Commission meeting to order. And we will start with the consent agenda items. And it looks like there are 4 consent agenda items this month. That's actually kind of exciting. We have PC 13195, 11 PND, the Kellerton Architectural Review, PC 18-38705MU, the Bloomfields Architectural Review, PC 14-91308MU, the Wren Quarter Architectural Review, and PC 22-1102 FSI, the final site plan for Bellar Farms. Do we need to go over those separately, or Gabrielle, can you just give us an overview of the consent agenda?
Sure. So as Jen said, 3 of them are architectural elements. None of them have any of the modifications like we've seen with the small windows and such, and no conditions. The packages themselves are ready to be approved if and stamped on our end if the Planning Commission is ready to go with them. So they're pretty straightforward. I don't think we've had any significant changes. I think on Wren there were just a couple cleanup items on the Wren Quarter architecturals that were addressed since the workshop, but I think the other 2 were in good shape when they went to workshop. And then the other is the Bel Air final site plan revision, and this is to create that opportunity to have the parking provided not through integral garages, but with either 1-car garages or with pad parking, but the same number of parking spaces that were intended to be provided. And Pam, if I missed anything, let me know, but I think they were all in good shape.
All right.
Nope, sounds good.
Are there any questions from the commission?
Not for me, thanks. Nope.
I recall Barbara having some, welcome, Ben. Do you have any questions on the consent agenda items?
I do not, thank you.
Awesome. Barbara had some questions on the architectural reviews about the high visibility sides. Was there anything about her questions that wasn't resolved that would make these or make her want to take these off the consent agenda?
They actually didn't need that high visibility as an element, so that really wasn't an issue at this point. And they actually corrected it to take that high visibility off in their design booklet, so that should be gone.
All right. All right, if there's nothing else, then we can move on to our next item. Looks like the next one is continuance. PC 21-508 FSI, final site plan for the Wren Park mixed use. And Pam, are you going to fill us in on the continuance?
Did we lose Pam?
We might have.
She had, I don't know, the lights just went off in my office. I think somebody just turned them off. I think I still have power. But anyway, so that they have to address their stormwater management. There were some
this is the park
final
park one, correct?
Correct, right.
Okay.
So this is the land that's going to be dedicated to the city with the path system and a surface parking lot. There were still some stormwater issues that they needed to work through.
Okay, great. Any questions? I can see everybody. No? Ben? No? All right, great. I have no questions. The next item on the agenda is our old business. It's PC 22-1001 ZMA, the zoning map amendment for 430 Pine Avenue.
Yes, me again. Yes. So this is the second of 2 required hearings. This is the request to lift that institutional floating zone off the property, which automatically reinstates the M1 base zoning that was applied during the last comprehensive rezoning. The criteria are outlined in the staff report, but are a lot less onerous than some of the other zoning map amendment decisions that you guys end up making. So your motion will be for a recommendation to the mayor and board, and we are supporting that.
All right, thank you. Any questions? No. Ben? No. April? All right. Looks like we're good. On to new business. The first agenda item for under new business is PC 22-921 FSI, the final site plan for Edge Express Car Wash, and then PC 22-923 PFCP, the Forest Conservation Plan for the Edge Car Wash. Sherry? This
Yep.
looks like yours.
Hi. So they did address your comments that we had, during the workshop. Like for the number of employees and the hours that they're going to be operating. And I'm trying to think of what else. There was something else, maybe with the like with the number of spaces and everything where the employees will be parking. So yeah, they did address all of those. So I added that into the staff report.
Right. Any questions? Alderman McShane.
Yes, question on that one. Some of our questions at the prior meetings relating to parking and staff parking. There seemed to be some confusion at one point whether there would be staff at all at this facility. And then it seemed to be concluded that there would be staff, which makes some sense, at the location. But my recollection was that the last answer was staff would park in some of the vacuum spots.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know quite how to frame this, is concerning for a number of reasons. That's not really an answer, in a sense. So is that still what is included in the backup? Is that still the explanation for where staff would park their cars, is so that it can be sort of, I guess, claimed that they would not be using parking spots, that they would be using service spots that are supposed to be revenue generating for the business, in a sense, even if the vacuums are free, let me know what's happening there.
Yeah, they are still planning to use those vacuum station spaces for their employees. I believe they said there were 4. They're anticipating 4 employees, but that is what they're still proposing, is to use those vacuum spaces.
And how many parking spaces are provided or required on site for the business?
Let me look. Let's see. Just looking here. Thought it was in my staff report. Let me look at the plan real quick and see what that is. I was trying to, I think they have 23 or 25 of the parking spaces. So I know they met the LMC requirements for that, but let me trying to pull it up here. Sorry.
I think it was 8 spaces are required and 27 are allowed. We're indicating that 22 spaces are proposed.
Thanks.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Can you run through those numbers again, what you just said?
Looks like the total minimum of 8 and a max of 27 are allowed. 22 are proposed.
And the LMC parking requirements, generally speaking, or I guess specifically in this instance, am I correct that the parking requirements do not differentiate between customer parking, staff parking, parking spot where the health inspector is going to park if he came to check something? Doesn't make any distinctions about what these parking spots are for. The only distinctions maybe would be 80 handicap parking spots or something like that. But is that all correct?
That is correct. ADA accessible spaces are actually incorporated into the min-max because you're assuming some percentage of the population may need them. So that ADA accessible spaces are not in addition to the minimum parking requirement. They could include the minimum parking requirement.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'll just say I didn't love the answer about where the staff are supposed to park, but the proposed facility is intending to plan far more spaces than are required at minimum. So I'm comfortable with that fact. So thanks for running back through that with me, though.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one. Have we had any public comment on this issue?
Yes, we had one comment that should be in your packets. Someone had sent in an email stating that she was opposed because there were already enough car washes along West Patrick Street. So
Yeah, I saw that on social media, and I didn't know if it was making its way in here. Not that we really have anything to do with that, but
No.
okay.
April? All right.
That's all I had.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, then we can move on to the next item, PC 21-1431 FSI, the final site plan for the East Pat Lofts. Sharon?
Yeah, it's just a matter of finding those buttons to turn my mic on and my
Yes.
photo. Hi, there have been no changes really since we spoke last, except of course the big elephant in the room. They did get their mitigation agreement. That's what the continuances were for, and the last 30-day continuance was to get the proper notification to the neighbors and the public and get the sign reposted, which they have done. So that didn't change the site plan, but what it did change, of course, was all the stuff that will have to take place before the site plan can be actually constructed or built out. And the really interesting part is that there is a huge requirement for public information and public information dissemination. There will be a website developed that the applicant will have to do that. There'll be a website. There'll be information about the findings and what it means. The reason why this site was really so important was not that there was a famous person, that was there, but rather that it gives an insight into the working people in that area. That was right along, old Route 40 when it was. Some of those structures dated back to the dirt road when Route 40 was a dirt road. So there's going to be a lot of good information about things they valued, what they saved, and what was found. This is a really interesting find, and it will really contribute to our understanding of what Frederick was and who lived here. So that's really the new piece of information since you saw the site plan last.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Commissioner Beatty, you look like you're about ready to say something, but you're on mute.
I've struggled on this one because I really don't like to see any demolition of. How old is the building that's going to be demolished?
It's quite old. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue, but as you recall, the applicant did not want to demolish any of the three. Right. When they came in initially, they had all three of those buildings up. They had a couple of I think it was, there's 319, 321, and 323/325. It's a 2-unit structure with 325 being upstairs with a stairwell that gives the office or residence, whichever it might be used as, of 325, the opportunity to have direct access. But the owner came in with a plan to have all three there, and then the infill building in the rear, and we were all excited about that. However, fire safety didn't like it. They didn't believe they could get an safety apparatus up through the existing narrow alley, and we understood that, but we argued, staff argued internally. I don't, maybe argue is too strong a word. We discussed all the other options that might be available, including the use of the private alley, which was also considered too small, and the opportunity of using the parking lot behind, that's right there on Everready. And neither one would fly. They needed to have some access directly to it. And we did argue also about the fact that the new building would be sprinklered. I personally argued that I've worked in jurisdictions where if you couldn't get an apparatus, a response time within a certain number of minutes, within whatever that limit was for that jurisdiction, then sprinklering was required. So the fact that there was sprinklering in that building, I had hoped would satisfy and would allow that building to remain, but it did not. I didn't win the argument. So that's why. And some of those residents dated, into the 1800s. Some of those are very old. They're not super well constructed. We have, of course, the new one, 323-25. It has a newer facade and has some newer elements, but 319 and 321 were older. 319 was the one that had the less disturbed rear yard, and so that's where that is the area behind there that has intact in-ground resources that are going to be saved, or at least studied, and hopefully we will save some of them.
And the follow-up to that, do we have access to the archaeological assessment?
Gabrielle, have they released that the mitigation plan yet in full?
I believe Joe has it. If it's something that the planning commission would like before the meeting, we can forward it over. I think we have.
Yeah, I think as an operating thing, I'd kind of like to see that with all these. We hear that it passed and there's no archaeological issues to deal with, but I'd rather read it and see to what level of detail they go on when it comes to those. I don't think I've
and
seen
it's really, again, it's not that there aren't resources. That's specifically why they had to do a mitigation plan. There were resources behind 319. And I do have the letter. I just didn't have at the time of posting this, the actual mitigation plan itself, the published plan that was the genesis of the letter that the planning division sent. So that's why I asked Gabrielle if it was available. So we will definitely get that to you. The letter itself spelled out a lot of the things that would be required of the applicant, and I did include those in the in a summary fashion in the staff report. But right. Yes, I think we'll find it's very interesting, and this will be it's a good save, it's a good solution in all. So
okay, thank you. That's all I have.
April or Ben? So Sharon, I just, out of curiosity, is there no alternate design of an additional building or no alternate use of this property that would let them do something with the property without demolishing one of the buildings? Was that even considered? Was it looked at?
Well, of course, that was the first goal.
Okay.
And so that's what we did study initially. And it wasn't, we didn't think we were going to lose any of the buildings. I was so excited about being able to keep the 3 buildings and not changing the streetscape. But it didn't happen right off. It really was, and our fire inspector, Steve Crone, did meet several times with the applicant, went over all sorts of site configurations. But basically when the hammer came down, that building had to go. And there were quite a few discussions internally.
So, I mean, even if they scaled back the newer building, I mean, made it smaller, I mean, there's nothing other than just keeping 3 buildings the way they are that lets them do something with
the fire truck has to get back in there. That was the determination. It had to be. There's a fire hydrant, as you know, in front of that building across the street. And so a hose, we argued that
Yeah.
I am so appreciative that you understand and feel the dilemma. You're feeling exactly what we went through. But the fire safety and life safety issues had to trump our concern, and they really had to get the truck up against that. I mean, as close as they could get to that building, and they were not going to be happy to just pull a hose and send a few men in a single line, men and women, in a single line up to hold the hose. So
Right.
it sent the applicant back to the drawing boards for 6 months almost, trying to
Mhm.
figure out how to make that work.
And the
'Cause the
applicant
loss-
did go through the demolition review process. So anything that is outside of the historic preservation overlay or a historic preservation overlay that is being proposed to be demolished in its entirety or even major segments of it does require a demolition review process through the Historic Preservation Commission, which, as we know, that can prompt the overlay designation process. So they did complete that review.
They did, and the HPC did not want to designate it. Why we ended up with a archaeological study was the separate review that's also required as part of this process for an archaeological evaluation. And that, not the HPC, triggered the additional studies in archaeology and the additional testing. So we had two other layers working, for this site. And it just that when it comes to life safety, all we can do is hold back and save whatever resources are there, or at least save them and in such a way that the public gains from the knowledge, which is what's going to happen on the archaeological side of things. But we lost the building, and it was not part of the plan, but it is the way it's going to have to be. Even if the building was small, to your question, Joan, if Commissioner Joan, if I may,
Informal Friday.
there you go.
Casual
Thank you.
Friday.
If we had even if we'd had a smaller structure with fewer units, if it involved getting a fire safety apparatus or life safety apparatus up there, they still would have taken that building.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Oh, all right. Well, we can move on to our next items. It's PC 22-1006 FSI, the final site plan for Bojangles. And then at the same time, we can also discuss PC 22-1009, the combined forest stand delineation and forest conservation plan for Bojangles. Ah, that looks like you too.
That's right. So we can address either one first. Which would you like to do? The forest stand is smaller. It's the smaller one. And as you know, they did do a delineation. It is basically a paved site, fully improved with a fringe of trees and shrubs around mostly the western boundary, some trees along the eastern boundary, and some small areas of landscaping near the building. So there was no way to actually meet the requirements for a forest stand, which have certain size requirements, have to be at least 35 feet wide and by 100 feet. They're going to pay the fee in lieu. Now they have done, as you'll see on the site plan, they have done as much landscaping as they can. It'll be a significant improvement in landscaping, but it won't meet the requirements for a forest stand. Okay.
You want to just go on to the site plan?
All right.
And then I'll ask for questions.
Oh, the site plan, there's been no change really since we spoke before. We did take a look in conversations with the applicant about the parking. But frankly, there was one of the concerns, if I remember, Alderman McShane had mentioned concern about the crossing of the internal drive aisle, but that's going to exist. That drive aisle is there. We did not. I sort of side with, and I recommend this approach the applicant had, which was there's just not that a lot of the parking that was there. One of the problems that the previous tenant had was an underuse of the over parked site. So it's not like there's going to be a parking. They have done tremendous commercial studies over decades. We're always glad to have those on the part of the industry, various whatever the industries are, in this case, a fast food restaurant chain. So they have a pretty good idea of the parking they need. Anything else is likely to remain under park or over parked and pervious, just hard stand. Which will they've basically said we don't need that. We're going to put more landscaping on it. They don't feel that it will necessarily create more crossing over than is already the case. They just feel that they won't have as much hard stand. They'll have a better landscaped site. And so they didn't change the site plan. So we can talk about that if you'd like.
Any questions? Alderman McShane, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. All right, it sounds like we're good. Then the last one on the agenda is PC 22-835 PSU FSI, the preliminary plat and final site plan for Summervale. That's also you.
That's also me. And this one's a monster. But
Mhm.
as you know, it encapsulates decades of review. So since we last spoke, they went to the Parks and Rec Commission, and so the recommendations that we took forward, which were based on our city staff, not transportation, the Parks and Recreation staff itself, and our planning staff. And paths, everybody who might be involved with that had the opportunity to chime in, had recommended removal of HOA maintained improvements. One was a path that bisected City Park. The other was a concrete pad and like a bridge in the valley that the path would have connected with. That was to be maintained by HOA. We just asked them to take that out of the City Park area. So there's a little notch in City Park. And then, of course, we talked about enhancing the overlook so that it was clearly a part of the public realm and not something that was just there and the general public might feel belonged to the community of Summervale. So the applicant did prepare some nice exhibits and have modified their approach so that the 10-foot wide path, a shared path, that goes from Alt 40 at the north down to the roundabout, continues to the overlook, has a nice wide park. They've enhanced the furnishings, beefed up the landscaping, and at the edge of the city park on the west side, it goes back to the 5-foot lane to serve the subdivision. That's significantly different than we saw a few months ago, at which time the 10-foot path stopped at the crosswalk right just to the west of the roundabout and went to the 5-foot path, went to the overlook. So now we have a 10-foot wide path that clearly, I think makes the case that this is public realm. This is the community, the general community's overlook. And you can go to the overlook and take advantage of it. The Parks and Recreation Commission approved that. Their minutes are not published yet. They won't be published until they're posted and adopted at their next meeting, which is this month. But they did approve it unanimously. One question of interest, I think you might enjoy, was brought up. One of the commissioners did ask whether or not in the future, if the city decided that it wanted a path down from the shared youth path to the park, to the bridge at the valley, could they do it? And of course, yes. But at that point in time, it will be city property, and the city would build the path. The dilemma with having HOA build the path was that if anybody gets hurt on that path, or if it needs to be maintained and there are complaints about it, it will appear to everybody that it's city owned, but it's really HOA path. And until some of the vegetation grows, there will be issues with maintaining it anyway. The city's going to have enough of a challenge just to make sure that it always stays nice, that everything grows and it's lovely. So they don't need to be dealing with the path right off. Our goal was to remove any maintenance and issues of maintenance that we could. That was our first challenge from about a year ago when we met with the Parks and Recs Commission. And with that, everything else basically remains the same as you saw it in the workshop.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission? No. I'm seeing 3 heads shaking no. I have no questions. So I think that's it. Anything from you, Gabrielle, before we close the meeting out?
No, Barb will be at the meeting on Monday, and I anticipate Dorothy, she may be as well. I'll have to go back and look at my emails, but Barb definitely said she would be back, so we will move on then.
Can I ask a procedural question before we go?
Yeah.
Regarding the consent agenda, will we need to make a motion to keep everything on the consent agenda before we actually vote on the consent agenda? Or is it assumed that everything just is automatically on the consent agenda unless somebody objects?
The motion can be for approval of everything on the consent agenda. I believe, I'm just looking through my rules. I think Barb, in her spiel, will read something to the effect of all matters considered under the consent agenda will be are considered routine, and then ask if anyone wants to remove any items. If she hears none, then you can make a motion to vote on the entire consent agenda.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. This is, I think, the first time in a long time that we've had multiple items on the consent agenda. So
yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's a good thing. It means
yeah, it is a good thing. Absolutely. All right. Well, if there's nothing else from any of the rest of the commission, then this meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you all on Monday.
Happy Easter, all.
Yeah, you too. Have a good weekend.
And a short meeting made a Good Friday even better.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Enjoy, guys.
Bye. Bye.